Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating and honestly pretty critical argument about our money. The core idea is that the most powerful central bank in the world, the U.S. Federal Reserve, is in the middle of making a huge mistake. So let's get right into it.
So, this all kicks off with a pretty blunt quote from investor Dan Morehead. "They're cutting rates like it's crazy." It's a stark way to put it, right? And it really puts the Fed's actions under a microscope, making us ask, are these policies rational, or is there something else going on?
And that really is the central mystery we're exploring today. Why on earth would the Fed do something that seems to just fly in the face of all the economic textbooks? What's really happening behind the scenes?
All right, so to understand this, we've got to break down what's being called this massive policy error. And really, it all boils down to one fundamental contradiction.
Just take a look at this. It's like two different worlds. In one column, you have economic reality, basically full employment, markets are at all-time highs, and we've got 3% inflation. Things are, hot. But then, look at the Fed's response in the other column. They're cutting interest rates. That's a move you make when the economy is in trouble, not when it's booming. This total disconnect is what's being called a massive policy error.
So you might be wondering, if it's such a big mistake, why isn't everyone freaking out? Well, the argument is that this is a classic boil the frog scenario. The heat is being turned up so slowly that nobody notices. The really bad effects, they're not going to hit us tomorrow. We're talking a slow burn, unfolding over the next 5, maybe even 10 years, which makes it super easy to ignore until it's way too late. Okay, so what's the immediate effect of a policy like this? It comes down to one word: debasement. Let's talk about what that actually is, and more importantly, what it means for the money in your wallet.
It sounds kind of technical, but debasement is actually a really simple idea. It just means your money is losing its value. Every single dollar you have buys you a little bit less than it did before. It's not that the price of everything is going up, it's that the value of the money you're using is going down.
Now, check this out, because this is where it gets really eye-opening. We all hear about the official inflation number, right? Let's say it's 3%. But here's the part we don't always talk about. Around the world, central banks are printing new money like crazy, at a clip of about 8% a year. So when you have way more paper money chasing the exact same amount of stuff, the value of all that money goes down. You put those two numbers together, the 3% and the 8%, and you get what's called a hurdle rate of 11%. That's the real speed at which the value of your money is just evaporating.
So what does that mean in the long run? An 11% drop in 1 year might not sound like the end of the world, but you let that compound year after year over a lifetime, it could effectively wipe out 90% of your purchasing power. I mean, just think about that. 90%. What you can buy with $1 today could cost you $10 in the future.
Okay, a 90% loss of value? That sounds insane. So why would any central bank let that happen? Is it really just a mistake? Well, this brings us to the core of the whole argument. Maybe it's not a mistake at all. Maybe it's because the government is caught in an inescapable debt trap. It all begins with the absolutely massive amount of government debt out there. We're talking trillions upon trillions of dollars. And this isn't a one-and-done thing. This debt constantly has to be rolled over or refinanced. Think of it like constantly having to get a new loan to pay off your old credit card bill. And here is the trap. The normal, by-the-book way to fight inflation is to raise interest rates, cool the economy down. But if the Fed did that, the interest payments on that mountain of government debt would just explode. We're talking about levels that would become completely unaffordable and could cripple the entire federal budget. So you can see they're backed into a corner. It's a forced move. To keep the government's debt payments from spiraling out of control, they have no choice but to keep interest rates artificially low. And how do they do that? Well, they create new money to buy up government bonds. And that constant creation of new money is exactly what debases the currency. So you see, it's less of a mistake and more like the only move they have left to play. Now, it's really easy to frame this as just a U.S. problem, right? But the source material is pretty clear. This is not just an American thing. This is a global issue. The truth is, most of the world's major economies are basically in the same boat, and they're all playing the same game. They're all devaluing their own currencies to stay competitive, which turns into this global race to the bottom. One interesting exception that's mentioned is Switzerland. They've historically tried to maintain a strong currency, which is why it often stands out. Okay, this next part is really important because it completely reframes the entire conversation.
We hear on the news all the time that gold is at a new high, or the S&P 500 is soaring. But what if that's the wrong way to look at it? The argument here is that it's not that these things are getting more valuable. It's that the ruler we use to measure them, the US dollar, is shrinking. So when you price the dollar not in other currencies, but in real things that have a fixed supply, like gold or shares of a company, or even bushels of corn, you start to see that its value is actually falling.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Let's boil it all down to the single most important idea to take away from this.
This is it. This is the whole ball game. It isn't really about a stock market bubble or a gold bubble. It's about the denominator. The price of paper money, which, remember, can be printed into infinity, is going down. Meanwhile, things that have a fixed or finite supply, they're just holding their value against a currency that's getting weaker and weaker.
And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty profound question to think about. In a world where paper money is designed to lose its value over time, what actually has real, lasting worth? That's a question worth thinking about.